This is just a note to say that I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm not an expert, and you should not take my word on any of these things. I have no idea what I'm doing. Have fun! We are looking at a VIZIO TV that died a couple of weeks ago when my roommates were playing Overwatch. And one of my roommates was just having a really good game, and this died in the middle of it. And the other roommate who owned this TV was like, this is a great opportunity to buy a 4K TV and get the fanciest of the fanciest. And he did, and it looks amazing. And he was gonna kick this one to the curb, send it to landfill. And I thought, well, you know what? I've read a lot about people who have repaired TVs with just like a new fuse or something like that, maybe like fix the power supply. And I thought, well, it's probably something like that. Let's see what we can do. So he let me have the TV, and I'm gonna try to fix it. So right now, you should see it's plugged in. I have it on its side, on its back for a reason here, but I'm gonna try to turn it on. So the power button is just under the left side, so I'm gonna press it. And this is the standby light right here. This little light doesn't come on. The reason I have it on its back is so you can see if the sunlight hits it, maybe it would have a ghosted image in there, but there's nothing. So no power, no backlight, no image. Even if the backlights were off, we might get an image, but not even that. So I think it's probably something with the power supply. Let's check it out. Okay, and one more thing before we start. I want to talk about tools, what things you're going to need to do this. I'm a layman. I just have a couple things that might be in like my toolbox, and had to pick up some things from Amazon to make this all work. So you want to make sure you have these things if you're going to try doing these repairs. So first, just a screwdriver, Phillips head. This is from like an IKEA set. Nothing fancy. Interchangeable heads, that's kind of nice, but that's all. We need a multimeter. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. I just need to be able to test for continuity, maybe resistance, that sort of thing. I don't really know how it works, but I know enough to make this work. And then this is a really cheap soldering kit, also from Amazon. Maybe 12 bucks, 12 bucks here. I don't even know what this was from IKEA. Not that expensive. And then there's going to be parts later on. So I've already unscrewed all this stuff. How I keep track of them is just with these little cases that used to have like hair product in them. So I'm just going to pull out the screws. These are the long ones that hold in the base, so the base can actually slide out now. There we go. And pop them in their own cup. These are the medium length ones, but they're smaller. Their own cup. Get these out of the way. And then I'm going to take all the short ones with the wider thread gauge, thread pitch, I think it's called, and put them in their own little cup. The other ones I can't get up. I don't have a magnetized screwdriver, so just going to pop it up with them unscrewed. One of them got stuck again. And I'll let them come up with it and pop them out by hand from underneath. Okay, so then the whole panel comes off. And there's the inside. So this here is the power supply, and this is the motherboard. This is controlling the whole TV. This just converts things, the power coming out of your house, into power that the TV can use. So when you use your power cable, it would plug in right in here, convert power into something useful for the TV. The TV sends it, the power supply I should say, sends it over to the motherboard, and then from this board also to the backlights for the TV. And then everything else is processed over here. So that's how you get your picture over on the right. This is how the thing runs on the left. Okay, this is a close-up of the power supply because I think this is the problem on the TV. The reason I think that, like I said before, is there's no picture on the TV. There's no backlight, there's no standby light, and all of those are things that suggest that there's no power going to any of the things that actually make the TV work. So I think there's something wrong here. So the first thing I'm going to do is leave it unplugged, and I'm going to use my multimeter, as you can see here, I'm gonna plug it in. Black goes to COM, right there. Red goes to the center. And I'm going to turn it to this guy right here. It's testing for continuity. And I'll put it right here so you can see it. Angle it up. There you go. I'll turn the backlight on. How about that? And I'm just going to see if the fuse, which is right here, that I'm pointing at with the black one, I'm going to see if that fuse is working, because sometimes if there was a power overload, I know fuses blow, so maybe that's it. So I'm going to put the black lead first, and then this one, the red one. I'm getting a beep, which means that there is continuity, current flows, so the fuse is good. If it had blown, there'd be no connection, power wouldn't be going from there to there. So we know that's working, so it's not the fuse. The other thing I need to check is to see if there's even, since the power is working, if there's any power going from here, see this connector here, over to the motherboard, which is there on the right. So if there's no power going from the power supply to the motherboard, then I know something's definitely wrong with the power supply. So I'm now going to plug it in and we're going to see what we can find. Okay, go in manual for a second. So you can see it's plugged in. I haven't turned it on yet because I'm going to check for standby voltage. So standby voltage, as I understand it, runs in the background no matter what, because there needs to be some voltage for the TV to be able to sense the power button when you turn it on to be able to turn itself on. So if you look here, this chart is a guide for this over here, these pins over here. So you can see pin 1 down at the bottom, this is pin 1 right here. And pin 2, etc. Okay, so I need to check to see if pins 1 and 2, 19 volt SB standby, have any voltage at all. If not, then I think the problem is definitely with the power supply here on the left. So let's check that. This is a zoomed in view. We're going to test the power supply from this board over to the motherboard on the right. And we're going to use this chart that I showed you a second ago to see which pins I need to test. So pins 1 and 2 are 19 volt SB standby power, and 3 through 5 are ground, ground, ground. So I can use those 3 through 5 as ground pins for this black lead, or I can just use the chassis of the TV, the metal chassis, or I can just use this ground part of the board itself that's grounded to the pin, which is grounded to the chassis of the TV. So I'm just going to stick it here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to test this first one, pin 1. Nothing. No voltage at all reading on my multimeter. How about pin 2? Nothing at all. 0. Okay, so we know there's something wrong with the power supply, nothing wrong with the motherboard over on the right. So we're not concerned about that guy, we're concerned about this here. Let's see what we can find. Okay, so I did some looking around on YouTube and I finally found a couple videos by technicians who pointed out that there may be some issues with these two diodes right here. So I decided to test those first. So I'm using my multimeter. I've got it set to continuity right here. And I'm going to test this first diode at the bottom. Now diodes are one-way gates for power, so it can only go in a certain direction. So I'm going to put the black lead over by the silver stripe. By the way, these are loose because I desoldered them and I know they're bad, but I stuck them right back in so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm putting this black lead over by the silver stripe and the red lead on the left. So if I get a beep, that means it's faulty. If I don't, that means it's working. There's a voltage drop across it. They're doing what they're supposed to do. So here's the first one. Okay, no beep. It seems like it's a good diode. And another way to test it is if I reverse it, I should get an error. Good. The display says 1, it's an error. Here's the 1, if you can see it. Okay, so that diode seems to be working. Now, this other diode, let's test it. Okay, continuity. That diode has failed. You can see again what I'm doing. There it is, failed. I'm going to flip these, same thing I did for the other one, and let's see. Continuity again. Yep, so it's letting power through in either direction, current's flowing. That's a bad diode. Now, like I said, I've tested these already, and I actually went ahead and desoldered them. And you can see from this one right here that there's a little tiny hole right over the 4. Do you see that in the silver area on the stripe? Little tiny hole in this diode. So it blew open, it exploded. So that's probably when it failed, when my friends were playing Overwatch. I can show you the other diode, and it's fine. It has no hole in it. So that's it. I know these are the problem, and I've ordered replacements. I'll let you know what happens next. One thing that's really interesting, by the way, is when these were still soldered to the board, so right now they're not soldered, there's no connection. I think they're soldered in parallel because I connected them like this, and this one actually beeped. Both of them showed continuity. But now that I disconnected them, this one seems to be good. The one on top is not. All right, so we'll be back in a week when I get my new diodes, and let's see if that fixes the TV. See you soon.